Hello, my knowledge-thirsty beauties, and welcome to another episode of DP to the Brain. And we have the return of the Stimp. It is return of the Stimp. Come on, return of the Stimp. Oh my God. Return of our good friend Jacob Stimson. If you haven't already, check out episode 4, where we talk about music festivals, gardening, some other stuff. Yeah, no, watch it. But I wanted to start here off with, I understand you just got your second dosage of microchip recently.
Yeah, man. I can interface with all Microsoft technology now. It's pretty nice, actually.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how much you can get done.
Now we're obviously joking and talking about the coronavirus. I think a lot of the conspiracy theories around vaccines, anything involving a chip, is just complete nonsense. Like, just scientifically, it makes absolutely no sense. But it kind of branches into an interesting topic, conspiracy theories. Now, real quick, I want to pull up. Now, the definition of conspiracy, just, to begin with our context here, the technical definition of conspiracy is the act of conspiring together. Conspiracy, conspire, makes sense. So it's all a conspiracy is technically is an agreement among some group of people is the technical definition. Obviously that's
Is there a requirement for how many people it is?
no. I mean, it's just general. It's just a very general term. So I think it's very interesting that, I mean, a conspiracy is really well, and generally in a like some kind of negative or criminal context, but that's more of like an assumption almost.
Not all conspiracy theories are actually about conspiracies then.
Well, what I was going to say is the term conspiracy theory. That's why I thought it was important to read what conspiracy actually means. Conspiracy theory, what we think of, and what a literal conspiracy theory is, are two completely divergent things.
Right,
Which,
but you can classify certain things in the same category.
like,
Maybe not
the word
correctly.
conspiracy has begun, for some reason, has been now inherently imbued with some sort of falseness. Like the word, if any theory that involves conspiracy is inherently less likely of being true, is subcultural zeitgeist. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You can't just discount something based on the name of it.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and not to dig too much into media right now, but we see that a lot where, depending on who says it, makes a very big difference. Donald,
Hmm.
someone on one side does something terrible, but then someone on the other side does something terrible, and I don't know what you're talking about. But that's, a whole nother worm thing. But anyway, some of the main, if you want to say main conspiracy theories, if you will, a lot of them do end up being, to some extent, true. The ones that are, based in reality. Lizard people, whatever. Things that are, but, 9/11, there's a little bit of,
Hmm.
I think there's questions in the 9/11. I think we can, actually, no, I haven't done my research. So you've looked, a little
I
bit
have
about,
I've looked into it.
yeah, go ahead and break it down for me. What is the, okay, hold on. Let me lead
I
in
was
to
gonna
make
say I actually did a
let
lot
me
of research on this.
let me lead in and make this nice and clean.
Okay.
So I understand you actually do know a little bit about 9/11 conspiracy, which I do not. So if you would give me what is like the common accepted thesis and what is the evidence against said thesis, and then what is the true or quote unquote conspiracy thesis.
Okay, so the accepted thesis, the one that, most probably 98% of the population tend to agree on, is that Islamic terrorists hijacked planes on 9/11, all,
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously, and they just targeted different locations in the United States. they were going to go to DC. Well, they did.
Well, I think that, well, those are all observable facts, like quoting, like where they were going and all that stuff. I think it. Would you agree the conspiracy is more behind who actually was pulling strings?
Yeah, no. So the conspiracy is that the U.S. government wanted or needed control of oil reserves in the Middle East.
Fair enough.
They basically staged a terrorist attack to lead us into a war with the Middle East so we could go over and take their oil.
And those are there's a term for that, false flag attacks.
Hmm.
All right, but anyway, continue.
And the evidence for that, a couple of the main things is the whole jet fuel can't melt steel beams.
Yeah, I mean I know that I know the meme, but what is that? I've
It-
also seen things that's scientifically not accurate.
right. So it's extremely hard for steel to melt under temperatures like that. Like jet fuel burns hot, but it's not hot enough to melt.
Well, what if it's a pressure? It's a combination of pressure and temperature because there's also stuff falling.
Well, to see, that's the thing is that the planes would have made a giant hole, which would have damaged the structural integrity. So, like, if there was just a fire made of jet fuel in the Twin Towers and a plane never hit it, they just set it on fire with jet fuel, it would have maintained structural integrity and wouldn't have fallen. But now there's a giant hole in the side and it starts warping beams, it's gonna, I mean, all the architecture, all the schematics is off the table at that point. So what a lot of the conspiracy theorists say is that we planted thermite charges into the Twin Towers. They say that like right on the main support beams, there were strategically placed thermite charges and they were detonated so the tower would fall. But if those weren't
Mm-hmm.
detonated, it wouldn't have fallen. They were just the
Hmm.
holes in the buildings and fires.
Interesting.
There's also a bit about the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. Um, oh, steel workers, America's finest.
Well, it seems like jet fuel can melt steel beams here, my dude.
Yeah, I guess the term would be melting as opposed to causing the structural integrity to fail
Okay,
because it wouldn't
but
melt away. Like, how you would
I mean,
smelt
but
gold.
I did need to. I was curious and wanted to dig into the specifics of it, but it seems that jet fuel can melt steel beams.
Right.
But that's not the only piece of evidence, of course, that you're breaking out. And now, okay, let me ask you this: Osama bin Laden, he is involved, yes, correct?
Yeah, because he was the leader of Al Qaeda at the time,
Yeah.
and that's with
Okay.
the
So
Queen.
it still was I mean, it was executed essentially the same, but the argument is that there was levels above um, Osama bin Laden,
Well,
U.S.
I mean,
levels.
it could be entirely possible that the CIA or some form of like deeper government was
Well,
like
okay. Honestly, here's what we do know: we are butt buddies with Saudi Arabia
right.
for reasons that don't seem to make a lot of sense. Just basing on outside facts, it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense for us to be allies. They are state sponsors of terror, and they're also, it's alleged, whatnot, that they were supplying terrorists for that specific thing as well.
Hmm.
So
Iran too. I mean, we don't like Iran, but they're another big player in that. They've been supporting terrorist groups in the
yes, but
Middle East.
that's what I'm saying. If Saudi Arabia is an ally, maybe they're an ally because they did a little dirty work for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing is Saudi Arabia has massive oil reserves. So, I mean, we could have come and taken it from them, or they could be like, hey, these guys next door are
And
gonna
then
want
we
that oil.
also, and then we also through them we pump guns into the region because we have massive arms deals with them.
Right.
Um, and Israel, but Israel isn't like mass redistributing to terror organizations like Saudi Arabia is. Now, some people
Yeah.
might argue that Israel is a terror organization. I'm not gonna quite. I'm not gonna go there. Separate issue. Talk about that later. Um, but anyway, This shit gets real. This shit gets. But yeah, Saudi Arabia is pumping guns into the rest of the region, which creates terrorists, which creates a reason for us to come on in. Ain't that just convenient?
It doesn't take a lot. And something like hitting us at home. I mean, look what happened in Pearl Harbor.
The same way they pumped guns and drugs into the low-income ghettos of America.
Hmm.
Same strategy.
Dude,
Same
our own
strategy.
government gives guns to terrorist organizations. You remember that whole fucking Fast and Furious deal with we gave guns to drug cartels to try and track
Oh,
them?
oh yeah, and yeah, drug cartels too. I mean, giving money to terrorists is bad, of course, but then we don't seem to doesn't seem to have apply to drug cartels who do just as, if not worse, things.
Drug cartels are literally the biggest problem in South America too, and everybody refuses to do anything about it. They basically run the show.
You know what would be the best way to destroy the cartels on every level?
Legalize.
Eliminate the market. Eliminate the market. And how do you eliminate the market? You legalize it. Gosh darn it.
Legalize everything.
Exactly. Then people do it in the sunlight. You don't need guns and machetes and all that shit. Turtles with people's heads on them.
You got to be careful though, because the corporations are going to get one sniff of that and be like, "Oh, that's a whole lot of money that we could get."
Yeah, okay, yeah. That is another. Yep. You are right. We got to make it for the people. I know Crystal Ball from Breaking Points had a really nice piece about that. Breaking Points, are you familiar? I want to get back to conspiracies in a second, but are you familiar?
I watched the one clip that you showed me the other day, the one
Yeah.
that you sent me about
But
the.
are you familiar with like Crystal and Sagar
Mm-hmm.
back from when they were on the Hill? I mean,
Very
they
well
just left
spoken.
the Hill. We're recording this on the 16th of June, so they just left the Hill like last week and went
Yeah, I was reading
independent.
the comments. Everybody was super psyched for them to be gone, so that they could finally talk about what they wanted to talk about, not be regulated by a major media
Yeah,
corporation.
and it wasn't. See, and it wasn't necessarily, and this is why it's so fucked up. It wasn't necessarily the Hill wasn't doing anything bad or wrong or anything like that. I'm still watching them. They're still trying to find permanent hosts. Some of the people they've had on there have been more hit than miss. But anyway, um, like it was just because the Hill is a large organization that has a lot of other things going on. They have reporters, and reporters need access. Well,
Right.
Crystal and Saga piss off. Oh, he literally told the story. Um, he said something. He basically said Maxine Waters is going to be head of the budget, whatever committee she's on. She's going to be head of that till she dies. And her people called the Hill and is like, "You're making death threats on live air."
Oh wow.
Well, like I mean, it was like basically a shakedown where they were letting them know, well, you do this kind of stuff, you're not gonna get any more access.
Right.
The Hill, they need that access to be
Mm-hmm.
able, because if only the crooked ones have access, then we can't even get the raw footage. And they're like I said, they're a big organization, so they're also based on like clicks and views and stuff, where they went to a subscription model, so it
Well,
gives.
I would argue though that a more legitimate, like a classic media organization that had integrity would have defended themselves and brought this to light, that they were being, threatened by a political figure over nothing. So the
Well, I
fact
mean, that's not gonna.
that's a whole other thing that you could talk about too, is just the integrity that reporters have now is almost non-existent. There are very few people that are willing to actually get to the bottom
Well,
of
I would
problems. And
say big name, famous journalists. I think you have a lot of really good journalists who just don't, they don't get respect, or they put out one good story and they're marginalized to whatever section because they
yeah,
piss.
they get hired and then they get sidelined. They don't have to do any more.
But that's
Um,
why independent journalism is so exciting because you
oh,
just get, you get like 300 Patreons paying $2 a month, you're making $600 a month. That's livable.
I remember when Vice, and I know what Vice has become now is a lot different from when they started. But I
Yeah.
remember watching Vice early on, and some of the stuff that those reporters were doing was just downright insane. Like they were going to some of the deadliest places in the world and getting right in the thick of stuff. Like they were really trying to
Real journalism.
real journalism. And then, but you see what it devolved into though. Like Vice is like, okay, we're gonna see what the best cheeseburger in Philadelphia is. You know what I mean? Like it's not.
They're like,
I mean,
what
they
makes the
still do
most
hard
money?
hitting pieces.
They said what makes the most money, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's
And
but it's so
what?
hard to find integrity in that kind of media nowadays.
Well, it's the click-based advertising model that the internet kind of has been built on to this point economically. Now, like I said, the subscription model is, you know, finding its places here there, but I think I don't know. I understand both sides of it where, if you just let people subscribe, say, let's say Facebook just had like their $2 subscription or whatever, and then for that, we don't take your data.
Right.
Would you pay $2 to have
It depends on
But
how much
well, here's the thing. They've done the math
you
and they know that it's not, that enough people would not use it. I think because mostly they don't understand what their data is worth and that they're giving it away for free with that little
exactly the
AI
ignorant
Reddit.
value of it. So they don't care at the end of the day. They're like, I don't, I mean, I don't see any results from people taking it, so I don't
Yeah.
care. Which is a
That's
super ignorant way to look at it, but that's the
I
99.
think I think the most important thing is just that make sure that people are educated and understand, and then if there's two options. Okay, Facebook Pro. Hey, we don't, the premium version of Facebook is that we don't track your data. Give people a choice, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just let people be educated and allowed to make a choice. I don't know. And then there's like a whole separate issue where. So let me phrase you this question: do you think things like Google searches, Facebook, Twitter, social media, are those public utilities the same way that electricity, gas, and water are?
Absolutely not. I don't think so.
Ooh, okay. Well, let me put it to you like this. So there are, especially in the internet age, there are a lot of things, like a search tool, that are inherently monopolistic because, quote Andrew Yang, nobody wants to use the third best search engine. Who's Binging,
Right.
right? It makes
Mm-hmm.
it's naturally monopolistic. So in areas, anything that's naturally monopolistic, like your water, all that stuff, becomes, a utility, if you will, is the argument.
I could see something as far as search engines. Yeah,
Well, I mean, even Facebook, like, it's the argument
that's
that that's
going
the
to split
new,
hairs
well,
because social media isn't necessary.
but it's the new public square. It
Yeah, but
is,
you don't have to participate. You know what I mean? And it's actually probably healthier for you to not participate. Like social media is damaging to your mental health in its very base form. So
uh,
like,
I would agree, but I would say that's a separate issue. That's a deliberate programming. That's a
well, yeah,
deliberate programming choice. So I'd say
I
that's a
guess I
separate
guess where
issue.
I'm coming from is that like you need power and water and stuff like that. And like as far as like to be able to get information these days, since libraries are disappearing and stuff like that, nobody reads a book to get information. Something like a search engine would be one thing. I'm going to split hairs here. A search engine would be one thing. The social media platform would be another because one is a legitimate resource and the other one is an entertainment.
I think that's a
It,
fair.
it's
I
for
think
entertainment. I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it, but
Okay, so
it's just
well,
not
let me
necessary.
ask you like this. So Google allows you to like look and search for information, which
Right.
so we're saying that should be a utility. There should be a utility looking up and finding information on the internet because it's
Right.
necessary
Hmm.
and it's naturally monopolistic. What about the ability to express yourself on the internet? Should that
Um,
shouldn't Because if the ability to express yourself is a fundamental necessity, then the idea of the public square, that is once again inherently monopolistic. Like if there's 20 different social media things and everyone's on different ones, then that defeats the purpose. The whole point is that everyone's on the same thing.
Right. I don't know. Look back 20 years ago. What did people do when there wasn't Facebook and Twitter? How did they express themselves then? You know,
Message
they
boards,
had
or
like forum.
there were
You
giant
just said
cork
happy.
boards where you would hang up your little things, or you know, there's different, or
Exactly.
you
I
know,
just didn't think,
there were
I
public
didn't see it.
spaces, but those public spaces just don't aren't, you know, are being replaced. I think, well, a lot of people, that space might be church, or
I was
might be this or that. So,
I like to go to, like I said, I like to go camping and I
hmm
like to go to concerts and stuff. And I express myself there. That's a good way to put it. Okay, so take me for
okay,
example. I haven't posted a tweet
hmm
in probably 2 months. Most of the interaction that I've had, and most of the way I've expressed myself is out in the community with people. I don't necessarily feel a need to express myself online. I find it to be not vapid, but like I really I feel like I have to make it. If I feel the need to express myself, it has to be a very good point that I'm making. Like
let's move.
I don't
Let's move away from the word express for a second, and let me see if I can point at this from a different angle. Um,
okay.
the ability for everyone to share information. So you've got one side of it where you can find information, but everyone should be able to share information onto the internet. Say, corporate whistleblowers, for example, should have somewhere that they can publicly put out their stuff.
Wasn't
Um,
Wikipedia trying to do that for a while with WikiLeaks?
Similar, but well, okay. Here's another example. You know, we saw in this past year, 18 months. Well, I think it's been just over a year since his death. The response to the George Floyd murder, and unfortunately, so many more like it before and after. The sharing of these videos or even even thankfully more minor incidences of cops abusing their authority, this, that, and the other. If not everyone has the ability to share these kind of things,
You
or
wouldn't
even something
necessarily
as
do it,
simple as like, hey, there's a power line down on blah 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 and blah blah blah.
right?
Could you see how that maybe could be argued that is a utility now in the 21st century is a utility?
Yeah, but
It's a thought. There's
it's
no, I don't think
utility.
there's a right or wrong, but it's definitely like it's starting to really become something that is discussed and debated because, like I said, these things, unfortunately, Congress and all these bodies, they don't they ask Mark Zuckerberg, how do you make money? Like they don't get it. But once we get someone in there who actually half gets what's going on, you know,
Right.
holding antitrust hearings against them is like,
I'm gonna agree with you on that one. I think once the government starts to really become it, and apparently I know they've talked about like beefing up cybersecurity and doing stuff like that. It doesn't. I haven't seen any evidence of that.
separate and extremely important issue.
Yeah. But I mean, separate but related in the sense that like our government's starting to care about technology finally,
Yeah,
in a more
and
public
understand
sense.
it.
Yeah. But at the same time, I don't think that they're approaching it. They're approaching it from a national defense standpoint and not from a like you said, it has the ability to like do a lot of good.
Hmm.
They're not interested in using that platform as a tool to do good. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I
and then
I
it
find
kind of,
I think it has more of an ability to do harm than it does to do good.
um,
And I don't know. I, I'm gonna have a hard time explaining my thought process behind that, but it seems to me is that every week that goes by, we start to care. I mean, it seems like we care more about like important social issues and economic issues and stuff like that, but all we're doing is talking. We're not doing anything. The internet becomes an echo chamber. So everybody can express these ideas and share these ideas, but they think they're doing something when they're tweeting about it. And then when they go out into the streets, they don't act on what they're talking about.
okay.
So it's really just
Let me counter you if I will. Um, the way that these programmers of these apps are creating, artificially creating the echo chambers. You have to keep in mind, like, majority, obviously there are some other things, but a lot of the psychological and, those kind of issues are intentionally programmed in that way to increase engagement, So, that would, in my way, if we're trying to compare it to the utilities, that would be like, lead in your water.
Right.
So that would be, that's like saying water is not a utility because there's lead in it right now. Is the
So,
counter argument for pro? What do you think of that?
oh, I think that's a good point. Um, and I have a question for you. So, if these things do become a utility, and we need a regulatory agency to get the lead out of the water, per se, like to base it off of your point,
Mm-hmm.
um, who would be doing that and how? Because it seems as though people have attempted it, or at least given it half of an attempt, and nothing's been able to stick because it's a point of preference for people. You know, I mean, it's almost like they prefer the echo chamber than another type of platform that may not be so um, cavernous.
And I think once again it comes back to it at least needs to be open and not in these, 9 novel long terms of service. It needs to actually be open and apparent what is actually going on. And if, the same way that you have to put the ingredients on food and it has to
Right.
actually it's supposed to actually be what's in there. I say same concept.
I think you would agree with me in when you go on YouTube, um, if people are being demonetized if they mention anything about like
Yeah, that is a huge thing. If we acknowledge that these are utilities, then censorship, deplatforming, all that stuff it
it
can't
can't
be.
happen.
And as much as I don't, disinformation. I'm not going to say that disinformation is something you should do nothing about,
Right.
or or that it's not a problem, but restricting speech is never the. I don't know who originally said the quote, but you don't beat bad speech by shutting it down. You beat bad speech by drowning it out with more good speech.
Right.
You
That's
know,
I've never been a fan of stifling speech at all.
and we
I,
were
I mean,
touching on
I do the
conspiracies.
same.
Alex Jones was basically just completely eliminated from the internet.
Yeah. I mean, oh, and over stuff that was dead and buried for years. I mean, the Sandy Hook, the stuff he said about Sandy Hook was not good.
Of
Um,
course. I mean, he said
but
lots of things that are A, not good, and B, just blatantly not true.
right. But at the end of the day, I mean, how much of an effect was he really having? I mean, he's got fans. You know, I mean, Infowars was a thing,
Mhm.
but is it
Well, I
negatively
mean, I think
society to
I think it's
where
reasonable to say that I shouldn't be allowed to sit here every episode on my podcast and just sit here and read off a list. This person lives here, go there, kill them. This person lives here, go there. That should not be acceptable. There are
well, yeah,
forms of
that's in the
unacceptable
law.
speech.
You can't. That's a law.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. But
Do we need laws
anything
for the
less
internet?
than that, anything less than illegal speech that is so
Right,
bad that is literally illegal, anything
right.
below that has to be allowed. Has to.
Well, and that's the thing. What the problem is happening now is that people are like Maxine Waters' people. I'm telling the guys from the Hill, it's like, well, we didn't actually say that we were going to kill you or anything like that.
Yeah, but then all the other allies they can write Hill, Hill far right media outlet The Hill threatens Maxine Waters' life live on air, and then
Right.
CNN's got a news cycle for a week.
Hmm. And that's I'm not a fan of more laws, but you know, what I mean, it's almost like you would have to.
Well, the failings of the media again give us a reason why we need a truly open place for discourse
Right. And one of the only places you're going to find that is like,
online.
yeah, but more specifically, like message boards, like places where people like QAnon
Well,
gather.
see,
You know what I mean?
here's the thing. That stuff grows in the dark. It's like mold. It only grows because, like, I mean, they're in an echo chamber of an echo chamber of an echo chamber
Right.
because there's split sites and then there's splits from there. Well, if there's just one kind of open hub, of course you're still gonna have like your little subgroups, but once you get so far level away, it's impossible. But with the only one level into echo chambers, at least they can at least see the other information. Like when QAnon festered, it was impossible for any information to even be seen by these people.
I'm
Just
gonna
a
throw
thought.
this out there. From what I've seen, Discord actually does a good job at providing a platform. They don't necessarily have like a homepage where you can like search for information and stuff like that, but as far as like being able to like meet people or like join groups, I mean it's kind of like Snapchat in a way, but like you know what I mean? It's it's like a message
Oh, but
board.
it's more, yeah, but it's more private. That's what I'm saying. Like
Right.
public, is a public message. It basically is a public message board a utility. Is the question, which on the surface sounds like a ridiculous question, but as we've kind of dug into it, there are arguments on both sides, for definitely on
Right.
both sides for sure, because there
And it's
is
just gonna get
definitely some
more
harm from it as well. So implementation is important, of course. Like I was saying with the way that they go out of their way to program it to be harmful because that's what gets them the most money. And then needing it to just be open so that people, if they want to, whatever they want to do, just make sure that they actually know what they're doing.
exactly. And it's hard to find people. And that's another one when you get to the point where you're so successful that you're able to start a site for a company that has the ability to do that. A lot of times you have ulterior motives. So it's hard to find people. That's like I feel like a lot of people would be really good politicians, but they would never be able to be in politics because of how cutthroat it is. You know what I
Or,
mean?
yeah, or like
So it's like an accessibility issue too. You know what I
you get
mean?
there,
Like,
and then you got 6, 7 people like, hey, I was a, everyone's a gatekeeper. Everyone wants to be a gatekeeper so that when someone, and then, they let everyone through, and then whoever gets to the top, that they come back on them like, hey, remember me?
mm-hmm. It's always
So
favors. You got to pay the troll toll.
that's why I said just more, everything just needs to be more open. More open is always the answer.
Right.
That's why, and then this is something very naturally branches off into the other topic. Net neutrality was a huge talking point back in 2017, but some of you may not know this. Net neutrality is, to this very second, once again, June 16th, to the second, net neutrality is still dead. And not only
Mm-hmm.
that, Joe Biden has not done his job, and he is not appointed a head of the FCC. The FCC only has 4 commissioners right now, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. So everything is inherently a tie that will never be broken.
I was gonna say
Joe
that's
Biden
just dead.
has not done his job. He needs to appoint someone. Um, you know, and that's all I'm going to say on that. Obviously it's not okay, but just generally going into the importance of why net neutrality is important. So I don't remember that. Actually, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to pull it up real quick. The name of the website because I want to shout them out. They do really great work.
And that's actually pertinent to what I was saying earlier about how the current administration, I mean, they say that they're trying to get ahead of this stuff, but they really are not invested in technology whatsoever. Like
This administration is 90 miles of talk and 1 step of progress. I gotta
yeah.
say,
You say
you gotta, I guess,
for the
pat them
first
on the
month,
back when they
yeah,
get it.
for the first month and a half, all they were doing was photo shoots.
Okay, here it is. It's called I'm gonna throw this up on the screen real quick for those of you watching. For those of you listening, excuse me, I'm throwing it up right now. It's called OpenSecrets.org, where you can basically, you can search by politician, by lobbying group, and you get the real answers of who's getting what money. Or what if, Comcast or whoever decides that we don't like that no more, so anyone who tries to access that site is now going to be trying to access it at a download speed that's so slow they won't be able to view it. That's easy, and that's
Throttle's a
as
real
of right
danger.
as of right now, it's legal. That's barely
And most
legal
people wouldn't have options to switch providers if they were being throttled because telecommunication companies have monopolies in every region in America.
because they're inherently monopolistic. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, anything that's inherently monopolistic, it at least needs to be considered of being utilitized. Kind of like the response to the monopoly in the train system when trains were, the way to get around. I mean, that was
Oh,
kind of that was inherently monopolistic as well.
the railway system in America, a lot of people
Yeah.
might not know this, is crumbling. It's super deteriorated.
Well, a lot of infrastructure is
The
like
train
physical
companies,
infrastructure.
there's, I don't know if people have noticed. I don't know if you've noticed, but there
I
have been a
noticed
lot
it
more
all.
derailments over the last like couple of years than there
I
ever
don't
were.
know.
They're getting more and more frequent. You can look it up.
I will.
Um,
Hold on, I'm gonna pull that up right now. You said train derailments are up.
yeah, but it's because basically these train companies are trying to save as much money as possible, so they're
Indeed, they
cutting
are.
down. I think a train inspector has to, every time a train stops, they have to jump out and they have to check every part, like certain like wheel bearings and everything down the line to make sure the train's good to go for the next section of its journey. And they're on a time limit for that. It used to be, I'm not going to be able to remember the specifics, so I'm not going to say them, but it was probably cut in half by 50 to 75% the time that they're able to go and check these things because they're just trying to push these trains through. So they're getting bare bones inspections, or if they're even being inspected at all.
Yeah,
A
well,
lot of
there's also the question of how many inspectors versus how many trains. Like,
that
there's
not.
nuclear facilities in, I don't remember what state, it's like, there's 3,000 and there's only two of them.
Yep, it's amazing to me. Um, and that's, I mean, that's a serious safety hazard. That's a concern. I mean, a lot of the shipping that happens in America is still by the railway system, but because it's privatized, they're able to cut down on costs wherever they can, and they don't care where they do it. So it's causing major safety concerns.
I'm trying to find the statistics on trains, but, oh, there we
But
go,
I mean,
train.
that's happening in public roadways too. I had a friend that I went to high school with. He totaled his car in a pothole in my hometown of Jamestown. It was 14 inches deep, and and the city never did
Yeah,
anything.
a lot of roads are really falling apart.
And there's barely any money going to them. And that's another thing. Road crews, those guys get paid a lot of money to stand around and jerk off in their trucks. Um, they'll do about an hour worth of hard work, and then they'll just fuck around.
Anytime the government's paying, that cow's there for the milking.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. Okay, so like there's a big hoopla right now about well, obviously, so Congress they approved a space contract. They contracted out through SpaceX, Elon Musk's SpaceX, um, and then Jeff Bezos still got like a $10 billion rebate bailout because he didn't get the contract. Like it was a contract for space company, and then there was a little pill hidden in there where if you don't get it, you can file and get a. Well, there's only like one other person who's there to file.
I was gonna say how many space companies are there in the United States?
Exactly. Exactly. But, and then the argument is made, well, NASA has been asking for this in their budget for years, and we don't give them the money, but then we'll give it out as contractor money to SpaceX. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing because, I think it's better that anything that's done in the private sector versus the public sector is inherently going to be more cost effective.
Well, and the rockets that these private companies are building are much more effective than the shuttles that NASA was using. So, I
And
mean, there's good sides.
jobs and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff as well. There's a lot of reasons why it's not necessarily bad that we allow, you know, private interests to do this, but when you have Elon and Jeff Bezos getting money,
right.
especially
It's
when
I
all
think
these
it's a little
papers
more
just came
incentive.
out, just, we all knew it, but showing in big bold letters Jeff Bezos doesn't pay taxes.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
takes he takes child tax credits for his kids.
I think it's safe to say that if you make over 100,000, or sorry, 200, $300,000 a year, you have a good chance of not having to pay taxes as long as you do a little bit of research, donate to a couple of causes. It's very easy to go tax exempt.
Our tax
Very
system
easy if you have the money.
is
That's the thing. You have to have money to be able to invest in charitable organizations to get your taxes cut. So it's a, I
it's
mean,
a joke. It's a real joke. The whole tax code is a joke.
yeah. I've been talking about that a lot recently. I think and the government's hiring more IRS agents than ever too, which is very
What
troubling.
all they're gonna end up doing is they're gonna crack down on more mom and pops to just squeeze as much money as they can out of them before they eventually close, because they know
I'm
Amazon and Walmart. Amazon is the #2 employer in America now.
I'm 25. One of my best
That's a
friends, Sam,
lie. For anyone listening, that he's actually 37.
if you couldn't tell, I think you'd say, my buddy actually was audited last year by the IRS. He forgot to claim. I mean, nobody teaches us how this shit works. You just have to figure it
They
out or
know
hire.
exactly how much we owe, and it's just a yearly math test. It's
Yep.
it's like survival of the fittest. You're like, wow, we're gonna lock up all the dumb
He
people
was
whenever we
audited
want because
because
we
he
know they
didn't
fucked up.
claim an old retirement account that he was no longer paying into, that didn't have that much money in it. But he forgot to claim it, and they were just like, "Oh, we'll take your money now." And Wells Fargo ended up getting paid for it
Well, dude, if
because
you move and change jobs
that's
throughout
who the
the year,
account
you
was
have to
through.
file taxes in like 6 different places. It's
Yep.
ridiculous.
So
Well,
from that audit, a private company was paid because of that.
yep, crony capitalism. I love capitalism. Don't like
Mm.
crony capitalism. That's something that really bugs me is that when everyone, a lot of the socialists our age are just like capitalism. No, that's crony capitalism. You have to understand the difference between crony capitalism and real capitalism has its issues. But saying that the issues of crony capitalism are the issues of capitalism is naive at best.
I was gonna say there's so many different ways to manipulate the system. I mean, you call it whatever you like. I've actually never heard it described that way, but that's a good way to put it. You can manipulate the system any way you want, you know what I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
still call it the same thing. Like, um, look at communist China. I mean, it's not like pure communism. I mean, they're all about making their money, but
Yeah,
at the
as
end of
long
the
as
day, they're still
doing
communists.
what's right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Oh gosh, once again, I don't need to pull up the statistic, but it's something like in the last couple of years, like 70 Chinese billionaires have died under like suspicious circumstances. 14 were just straight up executed. They didn't even like try to hide it. They just killed them straight in public. A lot of accidents for businessmen who do. Well, that was the thing. I don't know. Are you familiar with Jack Ma, who was a big Chinese billionaire? I want to
No,
say Ali. I want to say he's like the main dude in Alibaba,
okay.
but he's like big money dude. Yeah, Alibaba co-founder. So he's like one of the biggest billionaires in China, and he said one or two things that Winnie the Pooh didn't like, and he disappeared for like 5 months, and everyone's just like, he's dead, but he reappeared, and he's keeping a little quiet these days, but he's alive, thank God for him.
He's got a little bit of re-education. That's all. No big deal.
Well, that and they're just literally committing genocide against Muslims.
Yeah, well, and against their own people as well. Um, they
And
don't
the
care.
labor camps are used to create products for American corporations on
Yep.
pennies for the dollar. But hey, at least your T-shirt's only $5.
Did you see
At
that?
least your shoe's only $10.
Did you see
How do
that?
you think that they make it so cheap? Where does the cheapness come from? You think Nike? You think all these other brands are selling expensive shoes just like because they're just like fuck it, we're just gonna have like a 70% profit margin? No, wild, wild.
Did you hear about John? Did you see John Cena's apology that he
Oh,
issued?
I was just talking about that with someone. Yeah, because he accidentally might have insinuated that Taiwan has independence and China doesn't own the world, and he had to apologize in China. I'm so sorry. I am so very okay. Yeah, he
Dude,
spoke in
I mean,
Chinese, and
that right there just
that was
goes to show
pathetic.
you how deep they have their hands in the cookie jar. I mean,
It was even
it
more blatant than the LeBron one was at least a little bit more subtle.
right. No, that was just straight out like they have him
That
by
was
the
more
ball.
like Blizzard when Blizzard banned that Hearthstone player for the
Yep.
pro Hong Kong comments. It's this
Mhm.
or the reports coming out that they're editing and shooting and writing movies to appease the Chinese censors so that they can get into those markets untapped.
It's been proven that they alter movie posters
Do you think?
to
But
appeal more to their
do you
demographic.
think that's necessarily wrong for the movie companies to do?
Absolutely,
Why?
I do think it is. I mean, this is purely for profit. They're only doing it so more people buy the tickets. Um,
Isn't that their job as a private company to make money? That's what, yes, they're making the art, but at the same time, movie production companies have to make money or else there's no more movies. So, you know,
I guess that's not technically. I mean, it's kind of morally wrong. Like
I would,
especially when they do it for
fair enough.
like they'll edit like a uh the actor that the actor that played Finn in the new Star Wars movies, he was edited out of the Star Wars posters in China because the Chinese society doesn't really like black people. So they were just like, hey, he just doesn't need to be on the movie poster. Like,
Yeah.
imagine what that does to his self-esteem. Yeah, I mean, that company is just not
Well,
even.
I mean, Disney kind of did that in the script, to be fair. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
that
not
might
doing
be a
stuff.
reason why they marginalized him in the script. To be completely
Mhm.
frank, that might be a very big reason why they marginalized him in the script.
So they marginalize them in the script, and then they're just like, okay, we're just not even going to put you on a poster in an entire region of the world, like Asia. No, you're just not. They're not even going to see your face until they watch the movie.
Yeah, so you don't think that that's well. I mean, but
I think that's an issue.
but editing choices are made all the time. Trying to make the best movie. Characters get cut all the time.
Yeah, but
You
when
know,
it comes down to
but it wasn't done for a creative
it's
reason.
actually affecting
Well,
somebody's life,
it was done for a discriminatory reason. The reason behind the
exactly.
editing was wrong, so that's why you're against
Mhm.
it.
But that's, I mean, think about it this way: you're actively harming society and progress to make money. Like that's morally wrong. I mean, they have the freedom to do it, I guess, it's a free country. But at the end of the day, like,
Okay, how about this one? Okay, how about this one? Depicting the Prophet Muhammad.
um,
How about that one? Because that's not discriminatory.
shouldn't.
Or, some people in the world think that it's wrong, and so what about in that context? Perhaps if a movie decides that they're going to take out that visualization of Muhammad because it's going to, in the end, hurt their bottom line, is that wrong
Um,
for them to do?
would you argue that that's more of a respect thing, I think, than hmm.
Yes.
I don't want it's gonna be hard for me to answer because I'm biased about it. I personally don't really care at all. But if I was a Muslim and I really, really
Exactly.
deeply feel about that, that would be super disrespectful to
But
like
we're
me.
kind of talking about the same thing where they have to have a global audience and they have to play to different cultural I'm just trying to hit. I'm maybe not picking the best examples, but different cultural norms. They have something you know, in their movie that upsets one culture, and that culture is a big market. Is it wrong for the movie to cut their movie around one
Right.
culture? Yeah, well, does it make it wrong for them to cut it around Chinese culture versus cutting it around American culture? Because movies have been cut around American culture, so is it inherently wrong that they're cutting it around Chinese culture? Now, there's things, especially like the Chinese government, the Chinese political, all that stuff. I would argue in that specific instance, yes, it actually is bad because it's like you can't talk about Hong Kong, you can't talk about Tibet, pro
Right.
authoritarian.
Basically
The, the
covering
the
everything.
actual messages that come out of that in that specific context, I say yes, but generally the idea of it is it say it was India, say they wanted to like basically destroy Bollywood and take it over, and they started
Right.
cutting movies to be super, culturally more appealing to people in India versus, people in America. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong in that.
No,
As
I
long
mean,
as
I
as long as the
would.
messages being as long as the messages being created are not bad, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Hmm.
Or even what about this? What if they had different cuts? They had different cuts for different, which in some instances they do, but maybe make it more common. Like with every movie, you'll have five, six different cuts for different cultures, maybe, and
Right.
then each of those could be regionally subtitled, because you run into a lot of instances where outside of, your 5 or 6 largest languages, it's pretty hard to find movies subbed, let alone dubbed in your language. I worked with, specifically Vietnamese children. They couldn't, it was almost impossible to find a movie dubbed in Vietnamese, let alone subbed in Vietnamese.
Right. That's
So,
normally I would say that that's probably not the best thing because you're kind of closing people off to being exposed to other cultures. But at the
but
end of the
in the
day,
20, it's not like you couldn't get on Amazon and get, the a different region's version.
exactly. But that's, I guess, it's just odd because there's only, America is like the #1 producer of film and TV
Sure.
world. Like the,
But does that
like,
mean all film needs to have, American culture and ideals at the center of it?
well,
I don't
that's the
say.
weird part about it because that's most of the time that's what the deal is. Like we knew a bunch of Japanese people when we were going to college, and it was very obvious that they took heavily from American culture, and I'm almost positive it's specifically because of movies and TV.
Well, it's cultural imperialism, would you agree? I think people
Yes.
are having a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that we are no longer cultural imperialists. We are now becoming, we are being culturally imperialized, and it doesn't feel
Right,
so good to be on the other side of that boot.
right. Because like half of me wants to say, if you don't like it, just don't fucking watch it. But if we're the only ones that are making it, then we
Yeah.
should
Well, and then
probably.
if it's on the other side, if, China's making stuff that we don't like, they're just going to say, well, but, if there's different international cuts, you
Right.
don't like this one, then I'll get the China version, or, what, I mean, producer's cut, director's cut, that kind of stuff. Some people prefer, totally random, but my Halloween 6, very big differences between directors and theatrical cuts. Like, I really like the theatrical cut. Oh, excuse me, I really like the director's cut. The theatrical cut is garbage, terrible, horrible.
Right. That's how I feel with the Lord of the Rings. I like the extended edition with all the, the stuff that they
Yeah.
cut out from the theater releases. I mean, it adds an hour onto every movie, but the movies are so much better because of it.
Yes, it would be kind of like similar to that, where it would just be kind of more culturally curated, where maybe these deleted. I mean, think of it as like different deleted scenes are put in, because they have, deleted scenes. So,
Hmm.
some deleted scenes will be in and some will be taken out, but it'll be, you know, to keep it cohesive, it would have to still basically be 95% the same movie. You
Right.
couldn't like totally change it for culture because it just wouldn't work.
That would be an interesting conversation to have. See, because we're talking about it, but we are not in the industry, so we don't really know anything about it. That would be a really interesting conversation to have with somebody that's
Sure.
involved in
Well, I
it.
mean, I think it's just better than having one culture just mono, spreading. Like you said, it was, and that was probably, part of our Cold War strategy. To be honest, that was a big reason why we won. We won
Right.
because of our code. We won the culture war with
Hmm.
Russia. We didn't have tanks and stuff. We won the culture war.
Right.
So, and then, we've still been fighting that war. Well, now, because of economic and political failings, a lot of political failings, we are now no longer the dominant, well, like we're still the dominant culture, but in this context, it's being like we're running the show, but we're not calling the shots.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about how most of the rest of the world views us. It is not a positive opinion on Americans. And I think that's a more recent development over the last like 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I would have to look into more data, but generally, and then, Trump did not help our global favorability. Some people might say that's a good thing. Some people might say it's
I
a
was
bad
going to
thing.
say it probably started right around 9/11 because we were kind of just chilling. I mean, Vietnam happened and then
Well, it was a
everybody,
one-two punch because in order to get China's vote to invade Iraq in the UN Security Council, we allowed them into the World Trade Organization, which then led to the drafting of NAFTA.
right, which was
So
tough.
we literally made a double fail deal. We made a deal
Mhm.
that they would vote with us so that we could invade Iraq. Awesome. and then in return, we're going to just basically give them our entire market through NAFTA. Double awesome.
Which I'll never understand that, because like going back to the 9/11 argument earlier,
Look
like,
into the Bush family's connections to China,
okay,
which
they,
we were talking about Saga and Crystal earlier. They put out one of their first couple episodes where well, here's the thing, it's not just the Bushes, it's the Clintons, it's the Bidens, it's all of them. It's all of them. It's Pelosi, it's Schumer, it's Maxine, it's anyone who's there is
yep,
basically anyone who's there. There's a couple there, and unfortunately, those are the ones you don't know so much.
that's exactly what I was saying earlier. There's a lot of people that be great politicians, but they wouldn't be willing to do those things, so they'll never make it. You almost have to be an absolute sociopath
Or
to
they'll
be
try to
able
get
to.
canceled or assassinated. With
Yeah,
they tried to cancel. Scott Stringer. Now, I'm not like a huge fan of all of his policies. He's the comptroller. He's also in the mayoral race, but he absolutely got assassinated from the outside with, I believe, all women accusations should be heard, listened to, and fairly judged. But this woman's story is Swiss cheese that just got shot.
right.
Like, there's so many holes, and it is very clearly it was a hit job that took him out because he was, up against some
Mhm.
of the powerful.
If you have you ever watched House of Cards?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
I'm not going to get into it, but if you watch that show,
But it
you
legit,
know
it's unfortunately accurate, yeah.
very, very accurate. Like, I mean, yeah, it's embellished and Kevin Spacey's a fuck. He's fucked. But like
Well,
that
honestly,
show
that's only like the
real
sad
life.
part is it's only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more in real life.
It's so much deeper than that. That's just the politics that, what I mean, that's like in the offices. We're not even talking about like Bohemian Grove shit. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Break down Bohemian Grove for people who have no idea what that is.
The
Please.
demons. All right, so Alex Jones
Yeah.
exposed this place called Bohemian. Well, it's a place, it's an event called Bohemian Grove. I can't remember which. It's in a national park, right? Or it's
I don't know.
somewhere in Bohemia, I want to say. But it's an
It's
area
in like a
of
kind of secluded and like Camp David type
it's a
location.
private area of land where hundreds of the world's billionaires and politicians that are connected through we don't know what a secret organization. I'm assuming I mean it is a secret organization in and of itself, but all of these super powerful people gather and they just do a week of debauchery. They get drunk. Alex Jones says they bring in prostitutes of every gender. They do drugs. They do rituals similar to like fraternal rituals. Like they'll dress up and burn effigies.
And these are the
They pray
people
to
running the world,
Malcolm.
basically.
What'd you say?
And this is the people running the world.
Yeah, this is the people that control everything, business, politics. It's all the most major players in the game.
Why would they do that?
They just burn effigies to owl gods and do
No, like
mock
why if you
sacrifices.
if you were super rich and powerful and the Cloak and Dagger Society is like, yo, come to our drug little boy orgy. Why wouldn't you just be like, no, I got bunch of money, fuck you. Like why would you participate in such an event?
That goes back to what I'm saying, man. I think to be in a position of power like that, you have to have a screw loose. You have to have some sort of behavioral disorder that makes it so you can literally step on people to get to that point.
Oh,
Because I
so
mean,
they just all want that.
yeah, people with
There's
morals.
no coercing everyone at that level. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's
think
very,
that's a
very
bit
much
real.
that
I don't think
morals.
that's realistic. That every single person who gets up to that level, like all it would take. See, here's the thing. All it takes is one person, especially nowadays. All it would take is like they come to Jeff Bezos and they're next minute he's on Twitter. Yeah, George Soros just asked me to fuck a pig with him in Bohemian Grove. What's up with that? Hashtag weirdo. That's what I say. Especially with the rich and powerful,
But
they
that hasn't
wouldn't.
happened yet. It takes people like Alex Jones to expose it. So like, what I mean? Even if it's complacency, I think that's still just as messed up as actually participating in it. You know what I mean?
Especially in today's look at me culture, I think anyone who would have a reason to be a whistleblower on that, like Mark Cuban, he would, if he got an invite to that, he would use it to make money. He would be like, look at this, he'd shoot a whole documentary, write a. Book about it. So I think the idea that everyone who's rich and powerful is inherently depraved, I don't think that's realistic at all.
I mean, maybe not
I just don't think that's realistic to say that 100% of rich, powerful people are inherently depraved. That just doesn't make any logical sense to me.
maybe not depraved, but willing to do whatever it takes to further their, that their means.
Okay,
I,
so then so your answer to my question of why they do this is that it's some kind of requirement for advancement.
absolutely. Like,
Okay.
take
Okay,
this
so then they're not
example.
doing it because they're depraved. They're doing it. I think that's a different answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be
Maybe
somewhat
not a
connected.
different answer. It's I don't know. However you
You,
want to want that.
you have to, okay, like I said, take this example. Um, you own a company worth $500 million. You have an opportunity to acquire another company, do a merger, and turn your $500 million company into a 1.5 or
Yeah.
$1.5 billion company. But in order to do that, you have to fire 75% of the employees that work for this company that you can merge with because you plan on automating it. Most people would be morally opposed to that, but these people are more than happy to do it because they know they're going to be making twice as much money.
They're not. No, no, no. I am absolutely gonna counter
You know
that.
what I mean?
I
Like
would
to
have
be
to. I
to
would
get to
have to
that
pull up the
level,
quote. No, I'd have to pull up the quote from my man Andrew Yang from his JRE appearance. He says he talks to the people that are, making all the automated stuff and all this stuff. Like it's not that they're happy about it. It's just technological inevitability.
right?
So, but
Like I
maybe
said,
maybe
automation
I'm
is like,
cherry picking your example. I might be cherry picking your example.
I mean, I just picked automation because it's easy, but it's a hard decision. It would, for you and me, that would be a very, very hard decision to make. But somebody like Jeff Bezos, it's the easiest decision in the world. If it
Well,
means
what
tripling
if
your bank account, they're
what
going
if
to do
they
it.
know that when they make that $1.5 billion company, they will be able to do, blah 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 charity, blah 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 this. They might make a larger. I mean, the same way you killed 3 people, you pressed the button 3 times to get $3 million. So, if you got to fire 3 people to make $3 million to then help 300 people.
Yeah, but are they
So
actually
that's why I'm
doing?
saying these decisions, I don't think you can just put them straight to malice and, you know, I really don't agree that the idea that you have to be a bad person to be extremely wealthy and powerful.
Who
I don't think it's
so then
inherent.
name a couple of respectful, responsible, extremely powerful individuals.
Um, I mean,
It's a problem that one
Abraham
doesn't leave
Lincoln,
right off the bat.
um, George Washington for sure.
He
I
didn't
mean,
even want
it doesn't have to be 500 a day.
right.
But
One,
you saying it's 100% and it's an inherent fact, the same way that a tennis ball bounces, a rich person is bad. I inherently disagree with that hypothesis.
an extremely rich person. I'm thinking of
No, okay, yeah, extremely rich people. I don't think that's inherently accurate.
because I was gonna say we know some really great rich people
No, no,
that
but we're talking like
like that.
we're talking capital B and above, people with billion plus,
500 million.
all of that era. I'll count you. John Rockefeller was a good man.
Wasn't he involved in like cutthroat oil deals though?
I mean, yeah, cutthroat business maybe, but he didn't. He wasn't walking down Main Street cutting literal throats. And then he took all his money. He gave all his money away. He gave his
Yeah,
kids
but I guess
like
that was the point that I was trying to make. It's more, I mean, like even business decisions. Um, I mean, they're still. I mean, I'm not saying they're going. We were talking about Bohemian Grove. These people are doing like sadistic shit. That's different.
yeah.
a small number of those super mega powerful people are
I don't
involved
think
in.
being ruthless in your decision making is inherently an bad or immoral quality. If
I
you
I
know if
think
he's
that
confident, if he's totally confident as the utilitarian that his cutthroat deal is, he's going to build this business and then he's going to take that money and improve society. That's just utilitarianism, baby.
yeah, but how many of those people are actually improving society?
No, I'm not saying it's a high percentage. I'm not even saying it's above 2%. I'm just saying it's not an inherent fact that they are bad. That
No,
that's all I was refuting. That the hypothesis that anyone who reaches that level has to inherently be a bad person.
this is probably. I think it's going to probably be 90 to 95%. They're going to be
Sure.
a little
No, I
fucked up.
agree with you. But then that's what we were talking with Bohemian Grove. All it takes is that one person to be like, "This is crazy, fuck you," and then they have money that they could put the whole thing on blast.
Right.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, but
All it takes is one.
that brings
All
up
it
a
takes is
problem because
one.
no one's done that yet. It had to be Alex Jones.
Yeah. Well,
You
it's the
know,
same thing with all conspiracies that make a lot of them that involve, the larger group of people involved in the conspiracy, the higher probability that, all it takes is one person to talk. It's like conspiracies are like a bubble. One person talking blows the whole, if they have aliens in Area 51, all it takes is one janitor, one this, one that, you know what I'm saying? And you have to keep in mind time moving forward, you know, hundreds of people become thousands of people, and all it takes is, all it takes is one, who's cleaning this place, who's acquiring, this is as big as the circle gets, but,
I think that's why
there's
they keep them
evidence, but
somewhere.
then you get to things where evidence is found because people blow the whistle. When people blow the whistle, it is then the proof. But then, you know, the bigger the conspiracy gets and you don't have a single whistleblower, then that's when the red flag starts getting higher and higher. Because
Right.
statistical probability is that, you know, one billionaire or someone, which, the statistical probability hit that, Alex Jones found some kind of source. He didn't just walk in the woods and find it. Some person leaked it to him. So eventually it hit that statistical inevitability. It
Hmm.
just took whatever 50, 60 years.
That is true. You got to consider the fact too. These people are so powerful that it doesn't take very many of them to affect things. So
No, no,
like,
no. I agree with you on that. 100%.
so it's going to take a lot longer to reach that point because I mean, all you need is 50 dudes that all have $1 billion, and
Sure.
they're going to make waves.
Yeah, but it's like an eventually. That's why it was so important for me to clarify the point that it's not an inherent 100%. Because if it's a
Right.
one inherent 100%, then the conspiracy goes on endlessly, perfectly.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think that conspiracies can go on endlessly and perfectly. They can happen, but they're inherently doomed to fall apart at some point because they're inherently going to continue to get larger. And
It's
as they
like
get
the
larger,
conspiracy that they got.
all it takes is one person to break the bubble, and then once it's out there, especially with the way the internet is, so that's why I don't believe in the bigger conspiracies get, the harder I have believing them, unless there is evidence to back it up. Now, once there's evidence out there, then of course always follow evidence. But until there is evidence, I think that is maybe why conspiracy theory is a little bit more doubted, because the bigger group of people, the more likely it is that it's either true and someone's going to come out, or you know it's not.
Well, could you also consider the fact that a lot of times the people that are exposing the conspiracy, they're going up against people that have more than enough money and power to
No, no, you're absolutely
um,
right. Huge factor. Huge
silence
factor.
it. You know what I mean? So like,
Who wrote the?
even if legitimate evidence was found, it could be downplayed and ridiculed and
No,
thrown out the window.
you are 100% spot on in that one, and that is, it's
It's a
both a
problem.
separate issue and it's an issue that's tied together in the same. Well,
Right?
listeners can't watch, but I twisted my two fingers together.
Mhm.
I mean, evidence number one, Epstein. Didn't kill
Right.
himself, obviously. Evidence number two. You familiar with the Panama Papers? They came out probably like 5, 6 years ago, I want to say.
You have to refresh my memory.
Kind of similar to some of the basically it was the evidence of like everyone knew that billionaires and stuff just moved money, to here, to there, to there, to there. It was basically all the evidence of like, see, this is how they don't pay taxes, and that's you know, it was also it was a big movement in bringing down the corruption of FIFA as well. But yeah, long story short, that reporter got murdered real fast. Or and okay, this one's a little bit more out there. I haven't looked into it. The Hillary Clinton killing people. I don't know. I don't think she's killed like hundreds upon hundreds of people. And she had one or two people killed. I would have to really look into it before I say.
Indirectly, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say there's a probability of that being a fact.
Yeah,
You
but
never know. But with how powerful the
I
family
haven't
is,
seen evidence yet. I think it's very possible that evidence is out there. I would have see, and that's
I
the
think all
problem.
the evidence that is out there is circumstantial stuff. I don't think they have anything
Well, that's
concrete.
not evidence then. Circumstantial
Right.
evidence isn't evidence. I mean,
hmm
real, true evidence. But the problem in our current age is now we have fake evidence.
I think with something like the Clintons murdering somebody or having somebody murdered, I should say, it would be the evidence you would have to find because they'd be able to through certain channels. I mean, you could find a pistol, you could get the guy that did it even. I mean, whatever. But like, you would have to find like a paper trail of like who's paying this
When
person.
I say evidence, I mean like enough to convict in court.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
when I
You'd
say a
love
piece of evidence, something that if you drop that in the courtroom, immediate guilty 5 minute deliberation. That's what I mean by evidence. I should have clarified that in that
those people
context. That's how I was referring to proper. That's what I mean by like proper, true, full evidence. I need to
that's
see
very
proper, true,
complex.
full evidence. If I don't see that, then you know, circumstantial evidence is bullshit.
Yeah. I still like to
Unless there's
entertain.
something, unless it leads. Sometimes that those parts lead to the full truth, but by themselves, then they can't stand up, and that's why I'm saying if there's some kind of leaker or something, if someone's going, if they understand the risk, they're gonna make sure they bring something that's definitive. And unfortunately, if they get snuffed out and it gets covered up, then it gets snuffed out and covered up. But
Well, I was
they're
gonna
not
say
gonna. Edward Snowden didn't come with like, well, I overheard this dude while I was taking a shit. He brought the papers.
yeah,
He
and
knew what he was
what
doing.
happened to him. That was gonna be my next point. We don't live in a society where whistleblowers are valued, which is fucking mind blowing. I mean, we value them, but they're gonna
Yeah,
get snuffed so fast by the people, by the powers that be, that it's
pardoning Edward
not
Snowden
worth.
should be like a 90% issue, not a 50-50. It
Oh yeah,
really kills me that.
absolutely agree with that. He's hiding in Russia.
Well,
If that tells you anything.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's where he still is, like right there this second, but yeah, that's like been his home base.
The
That's
fact
been
that he
his
had to
home
leave
base,
the
basically.
US to go to Russia to hide from our government because of something that was
Yeah.
absolutely completely legitimate is one of the saddest things I've ever seen in my
Well,
life.
I mean, I think a lot of the arguments apply to Julian Assange as well. I think if I dug a little bit more into it, I think there might be some legitimate claims of criminality um, in his specific case, but that's not why they're after him, of course.
Right.
If they wanted to go after criminality, they wouldn't have allowed Epstein Island to exist for 30 whatever years.
Absolutely.
So,
To
yeah.
piggyback what we were talking about earlier though, regarding evidence building, like you were saying, like,
Hmm.
after 50, 60 years of this thing getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it finally spilling over. That's exactly how I feel the UFO situation is currently.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
don't have no physical evidence, but enough video
I'm sorry, Stimp.
stuff.
We're about we're about to head into UFOs. Let me take a and then we'll get started proper on it because I know that's like we want to spend some time on that, but I got oh preparations being made.
Recording in progress.
All right, we had to do a little preparation before we started talking about aliens.
I tried to make a tinfoil hat, but it didn't work out.
I think it looked lovely.
All
right, anyway, roll us in. Aliens.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so there's so much evidence coming out now that basically what's validated the whole alien argument is the fact that our own military has video evidence of these things, and they're finally admitting it. So it took the government. People refuse to come to their own conclusion about it because they just think, oh, people that believe in aliens are crazy, and they're all probably having mental episodes. And
See, that is not a conspiracy theory, because you believing in aliens and someone else believing in aliens, you're not like part of some kind of alien creation. That's not a conspiracy theory.
So the alien conspiracy is that the government knows about them, has dealings with them, and is openly hiding the fact, basically.
Yeah.
Is that the government knows and they're not telling us.
I think the only thing that's come out though is that they've admitted that we have no fucking idea what's going on. There's no aliens at Area 51 or anything like that. They're just admitting that every time we said it was a weather balloon, that's bullshit. Every time we said that it was something, we don't know. The answer is they have no fucking clue what's going on, which basically
was their only option. That was their only option. I, for one, think that they know a little bit more than they're letting on, at deeper levels.
Okay, yeah.
But at the open, very open end of the CIA, like the public side of the CIA, they're probably sitting there going, yeah, no, we can absolutely say that we don't know what's going on. And that's more, all they have to do is say that, and people are like, oh, they're finally acknowledging it, because they haven't even acknowledged the fact that these things were a thing. They would just downplay whatever. Oh, it's swamp gas, it's a weather balloon, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the fact that they acknowledge that it's a thing for people to start paying attention to it. I think they know a little bit more than they're letting on.
Well, it's also, I think, with the proliferation of camera phones and what we were saying before, where people would share stuff quickly. Well, okay, let me ask you this: do you think there's been more sightings, or do you think there's been a higher percentage of recording of sightings?
I don't think that the frequency of sightings has changed at all over the course of human history. If I'm going to be real with you, I think that they've been here steadily for as long as they've been here. I think it's just been
so they've been watching since we developed legs.
I think that it has evolved in terms of what people's view of them actually were. Like back in the 1400s, hang on, I'll give you a visual aid.
Because I was about to ask if you had what you were basing this theory off of. I assumed you had something.
Okay, so this is a depiction that was made in Germany in the 1400s. It was a wood burning. It was basically like their version of a newspaper. And it literally shows a battle in the sky and like ships that crash.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind, basically up until 1700, 1800, everyone was basically just tripping sack 24/7.
Yeah, that's this is what I'm going to get at. They a lot of historians want to attribute that to mass ergot poisoning, basically a mass poisoning of LSD, brought on from consuming bad bread. But this depiction, actually, I'm going to bring this up again. A lot of times you would see they would post something because there was a lot of religiously charged themes in a lot of the information that the public was getting. So you would be seeing crosses in the sky or swords in the sky, and all of these objects are not that. They didn't contribute to anything religious. They literally said that there were just shapes in the air, because there's what this tapestry doesn't.
Exactly. They were hallucinating. They were seeing things that weren't there. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
just the entire city was just all hallucinating at once, right?
How do you know what the entire city saw? All you know is what the painter saw.
Oh, this was a company. This is like documented. Like there was tons and tons of reports. If you read the text, this is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
You could probably pull that text up.
Okay, so you would have to, like, what is that called? I'm not gonna like read it right now, but if people are
Battle over
interested, I'll link it down in the description.
it's referred to as the Battle over Berlin. Um, but I mean,
Okay, yeah, there'll be a link about that down in
like
the description for people who want to
the
do
ancient
more. I don't
Indians
want to
would
get
all.
too caught up in the weeds of one specific instance,
Well,
so
yeah, no, I'm branching out. Don't worry.
yeah.
The ancient Indians, they would always say that they saw flaming like cities or like castles in the sky that were like on fire and all this stuff. Every ancient religion has depictions of these things. A wheel on fire. There's ancient paintings with
What if
UFOs.
those weren't aliens? What if those were actual, what if, for lack of a better wording, what if the religions were right and they were seeing what they were actually seeing? What if they were actually seeing God, hypothetically?
Well, see, that's what a lot of people think is that they actually attribute aliens to God, like that aliens are their God.
Well,
Um,
especially with your theory of them being here ever timeless, because my theory would be that, you know, there is some event that caused, once
yeah,
because I have to assume that infinite universe means infinite planets. Infinite planets means essentially infinite planets with life, because even if 1% times infinite is infinite. So, there has to be some kind of, they can't, they're not monitoring every single planet infinitely because that's impossible. So, there's got to
right.
be some kind of like trigger to be like, hey, what's going on here? Was it the discharge of the atomic bomb? Was it the internet? Was it the wheel? I'm curious at what stage are they like, hey, they're actually advanced enough to be worth watching. They weren't
I
watching us as
often wonder
cells.
my personal belief, and this might be a little out there for some people, but I think this is perfectly plausible. Yeah, I mean, considering the entropy of the universe, human beings, yeah, we share genes related to things like apes. I mean, our genetic code is very similar to fucking mice. You know what I mean? But
Well, carbon, well, any carbon-based life form, we're gonna be like
yeah,
six.
but I'm getting into genetics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Our genes are very closely related to mice. That's why we test on them. Even more closely related to apes.
Or like some form of like mole or shrew, right?
But at some point, because I mean, if you look at the evolution of the Homo sapien, we split off from Cro-Magnons at some point. We don't know when.
Mm-hmm.
Homo sapiens just showed up. We're like, hey, we're here. We look different. We're smarter. Um, and now look at us. We're the dominant species on the planet in a very, very short amount of time. A very high level of evolution in a very short amount
That
of time.
is, oh my gosh, give me just 1 second. I gotta go grab it. That is so funny because it reminds me of but I just bought a book recently, which I can't find or else I would say the name of it. But it is from an evolutionary biologist, and it talks about like exactly from the point you were talking about, from the point that we split off. It basically the evolutionary process by which consciousness formed in us. The consciousness that makes us different from every other, you know, organism on this planet. And you would maybe argue that the development of consciousness is what might be the big trigger point for them to be like, hey, there's life on all planets, but we have to wait till the life is at least conscious. Well, conscious in like the way that we are, not in the way that animals are literally conscious. They're not unconscious, but
Right.
I don't want to get too stuck on words, if you
Think of the
will.
Cro-Magnons as opposed to the Homo sapiens. Similar, I mean, basically the same. We have Cro-Magnon genes
Just
still
basically a human body with an animal mind.
to a certain extent. I mean, Cro-Magnons were able to do a lot. I mean, they had fire. But there's a certain extent to where,
So then they were past the point of consciousness beginning.
right? So why would they have died off? Um,
Hmm.
I This is a point that I've heard brought up before, and it's something that I tend to see as a possible reality is that we were altered at some point genetically um, to have a consciousness or a larger brain or more of a functionality to become
Well,
smart.
I think we should both read this book first because I think that might provide evidence to your hypothesis is that the development of consciousness came from an external source. And I'm
Yes.
going to guess that this book is going to argue that you know, that it's going to argue how it evolved, how consciousness evolved from not being from animal to. So I think if we read the book, we'll see whether there's evidence or whether it's just a big conspiracy.
Yeah. I mean, that's you're just gonna have to take that guy's word for it though, like because there's no way.
Excuse me, I think it's a woman that wrote it. Don't make me get Jen Psaki in here on you. Anyway, but I mean, but like continue. That's just like one part of it.
So
Like
there's a
so
missing link
but
that we
that's your
can't,
hypothesis though
and
that
I think,
this came
and
from external stimuli.
huh?
So you think that I mean I don't mean to take the words out of your mouth, but I'm just trying to summarize it. Like you believe that our consciousness developing was you know came from external maybe alien sources. Is that what
Yes, gene therapy, just alterations of our genetic code, to a certain,
experimenting?
because there's a definite period of time where we can't account for anything that happened, and the greatest species on the planet arose from basically a monkey that could start a fire. And I'm sure that that book would raise a lot of good points, and I have looked into that as well. Just the evolutionary consciousness, but I find it hard to believe that it was just solely based on luck. Because I feel like it would have happened with
Here's
another
a theory
species
for you. The
at some
aliens
line. We are so vastly different than any other species on the planet. We've evolved so much faster and farther, and no other species has done it. Like
we
there are
are we are, if you will, we are humans generation two. Aliens are superhuman generation, if you will, and we, like you described, what we were talking about, the gene therapy, the experimentation, is actually just their form of colonialization. If in essence they have an eyedropper full of themselves, and they know what kind of planet they need to drop it into, blink, and then now they're just checking on their growing organism.
Yeah, we're basically like an ant farm or like a petri dish. Um,
But my
and
theory is my theory is of themselves because they're spreading themselves, not
that's a
like not trying to
possibility.
create a new organism. Like I'm arguing, aliens are the same organism as us. They're just spreading themselves, almost like just like Unity and Rick and Morty,
Yeah.
but
Well,
without the hive mind aspect of it. Like single.
I know this is sound ridiculous, but South Park had an episode where they went way far in the future and everybody kind of looked the same because of interbreeding. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're all the same species, but we will all look different, right? But if you are allowed to breed far enough in, everybody's going to start to look similar because all those genes are being mixed together. So, I mean, if you think about it, like we're
But that doesn't
like
account for genetic mutation.
no, it doesn't. But I mean, that's a random occurrence.
Well, random is what breaks the cycle, just what we were talking about with the conspiracy theories. One random breaking the cycle is what breaks it. It's just one. It doesn't need to be every single one. It can be 0.01%, but one genetic mutation out of a million people, and that's a whole new gene line,
Yeah, but
hypothetically.
we're also not accounting for our capability to edit genes. Like right now, we have CRISPR. Like you can make a baby with
Oh yeah,
whatever.
okay, yeah, yeah, no, no, absolutely.
So if we're
That
talking about a
could lead
civilization
to
that,
like factory mass production of genetics. True that.
yeah, millions of years in the future, there's a very good possibility that they are genetic. They have altered their own genetics to such an extreme that and we could never account for the societal reasons why they would do it.
Yeah, but that
I
has
mean, we
nothing to
don't
do
know
with us. That's just that's unnatural external. That has nothing to do with us as whatever we are as organisms. That's just something
right.
that's done to us. So yeah,
So
that's all I would say.
I mean, that's a reach. You know what I mean? Just kind of an explanation as to like why they would like look similar or look different or whatever.
Mhm.
But that's the biggest problem with all this is that we're talking about a civilization that's, if they're real, undoubtedly like thousands and thousands of years more advanced than we are.
There would have to be
So
interplanetary.
yeah, and there would be, or I was going to say interdimensional. Um, that's
Probably both.
also,
Probably both.
exactly. I mean,
But
what's to
like,
say?
if you were looking to spread the human race to another planet, would you, you can't send humans because they're gonna die 200 years before they get there. But what if you
Right.
have single cell replicating human, human easy bake Betty Crocker mix or whatever, just add Earth,
Mm-hmm.
just doop when they get there,
Find
and
the
then
best
they grow
fits.
up from there, and then, once we're advanced enough, then they'll be like, oh hey, yeah, by the way, we made you.
Exactly. If you can find a planet with organisms on it, you find the organism that's best suited to for your genetic makeup. There you go. And I don't know how you would get that done. I've
So I
thought,
guess my theory is that we are aliens. We are like the exact same species as aliens. We're just them spreading themselves. You know,
possibly. I mean, we
they
could be
might
like
look different. They might look different because of, you know, the conditions of human life, if you will, are not the same conditions that are going to produce people to be the same. We'll be the
right,
same on the inside, but the planets will create people that look different on the outside.
right,
Through like
exactly.
long term, okay, short term evolution will create differences in us, but in the end, through long term evolution, we're still going to be the same species, the one species of consciousness, if you will.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So instead of it being a separate species, aliens being a separate species, we're the same species. They're just spreading themselves. There's not multiple species of conscious. There's just one.
The way
That's
I see it, it's probably
that's a
more like
theory.
a
So like
hybrid
up in the
species.
UFO is someone who looks just like you. Maybe he's just
No.
checking in.
Mm-mm.
Okay, they
I think
don't
it's
look the
more of a
same, but
hybridization.
might not look the same, but like on the inside is just like you. Like personality, all that stuff.
Mm,
No? You
I
don't
don't
see
agree
it?
with that either.
Why
I
not?
think that their society has developed in such a way that they're probably actually nothing like us. They're probably very
Like
pragmatic,
biologically speaking the same.
similar. Because if we're a hybridization, we would look different than them. We would have a 50% gene similarity, 75%, but we wouldn't be at 100% them if it was a hybridization. I'm saying it's like
Okay, so there's going to be a mix. So I think this is how it needs to be broken down. There's going to be a mix of nature and nurture, right? We will
yeah,
have the same nature. We have the same nature as aliens. We just have different nurture. That's my argument.
yeah, and that all depends on societal views too. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like they probably
society, planetal climate, whether or not you get hit by an asteroid or whether or not dinosaurs are still alive. There's infinite number of factors, but the nature side of things, I'm arguing, is well, that's the theory anyway.
and that could be why they're monitoring us too. They want to see, because if we were just like them, they wouldn't feel the need to check in on us all the time. They'd be like, oh, they'll be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, every
But
now
I
and
think
again.
it's
Like
more like,
you've planted a
don't you
few
see how
plants, you don't look at the tomato plant every 5 seconds.
right? And that's another thing. Some people say that UFOs are just drones. There's not even actually aliens in them, which is a very plausible theory.
Yeah, yeah, it easily could be just like they're yeah, exactly. But think of it from this perspective. If you were a sentient race, why would you go and create another one instead of just spreading yourself? Because okay, so one of the main arguments about like us humans going interplanetary for Earth, everyone says that's a waste of money. Just focus on fixing this planet. What happens if we hit it? Something that comes from space destroys the entire planet. That's why it's important to make us an interplanetary species so that one planetary catastrophe doesn't extinct us. Well, that's just a long term, my theory is just kind of a very long term, like end version of that, where we've perfected the science of going interplanetary, and then we just send over cells and they grow themselves up until they get to the point where, if they went back to the caveman again, more like the space age shit, they would kill themselves. They have to wait
Right.
until we're civilized enough, and then they'll be like,
And,
oh, yeah, by the way, you can print food and all this stuff.
and
And
that's why I think they're monitoring us because they want to see if we're going to be able to make it.
Mhm.
It really feels like a science experiment to me.
It's a cloning
More
experiment.
like an experiment and
It's
less
a
like
cloning
a goal.
experiment. They're
Like
cloning
it's not like they're
themselves.
trying to. It's not like they're trying to further themselves and like spread their genes. I think it's they're trying to create civilizations that they can. Because I mean, think of the benefit of that. If you could create a civilization that's like expressive and creative, like making music and art, if you as a civilization value those things, like that's a big resource to have.
So your argument is they're not trying to make copies of themselves. They're trying to like genetically engineer even better versions of themselves.
Maybe
Like the
not even
perfect
better, but
version
just
of,
something
well,
that
okay, what if they've already reached what they believe is genetic perfection?
I
If
think
their
that they
society
can.
is at that point, then they're gonna, they would have fixed their own genetic imperfections before going to spread
Exactly.
it. So
That's why they all
so
kind
then
of
it
look.
turns back around and they are just spreading themselves.
See, that's I feel as though it's probably more of a like a cultural thing because like I mean I'm sure they've evolved past a lot of that stuff, but at the same time like it doesn't fit if they I mean if they have the ability to interdimension like travel interdimensionally or go from planet to planet,
Hmm.
like why would they need to spread themselves out more? Like if you think about it, that doesn't make any sense. You're just going to consume more resources. It like it's not practical.
Well,
So like
maybe
what
like maybe their planet used to look like Earth, and they fucked it all the way up, so they're gonna go somewhere where it's nice again. And they like
if they wanted to do that, they would have just dropped the virus down and killed us all.
it's a cycle. It's a cycle of planet hopping. How about that? What if it's just a cycle of planet hopping where they're waiting for us to be okay enough that they can send us the rest of their resources. They know they're dead. They know their planet's so fucked that that's just the new strategy is go to a new Earth, wait until we develop all the way up to the point, and then come in, give them the technology right before we die. Then they do it, and it cycles like that. Where it's just a
That's
two. It's a
nonsensical though
two
because
planet cycle. Where it would be a two-planet cycle basically, one dying and one new.
they wouldn't need to do that because
Why
I
not?
mean, if they're so advanced that they've mastered genetic manipulation and stuff, they could just repopulate themselves on a new planet without having to kill themselves off.
No, I'm
Like they
saying
could,
they're dying. The planet itself is like they're running out of oxygen and all that. Like the planet is terminally ill and cannot be saved.
yeah. So they would just move here, and if we tried to do anything about it, they would probably
What
just
if it's 500 light years away? They'll be dead. They still have human lifetimes. They need a way to transport these hundreds of light years away. That's why the ship, like you said, the ships that are watching are unmanned. Like they're not sending pilots. They're drones that they're watching that because the drones can travel at that speed.
yeah, because they wouldn't be able to pull the G's and turn their body into
So,
jelly.
they're sitting on their dying planet like, oh God, I hope they make it. This is, if Earth 1 doesn't work out, Earth 3 and 4 already blew up, we're fucked.
A
You know what I
genetic
mean?
Hail Mary, if you will.
It's
Um,
a theory.
that's a good theory. I like it. Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it,
The way that we just
if it was
destroyed
a
the planet.
conventional ship, if it was a conventional ship like ours and it was subject to G-force, then they wouldn't be able to travel that fast. They would just splatter all over the back. You know what I mean? They would die. Um, like we wouldn't be able to. That's why I like to think that their mode of transportation is something that bends space in a way where they're not actually subject to the forces of gravity. I think they're able to alter the space. I think the
Well,
ship
they
is
can
able.
send non-living stuff through black hole. They just can't that physically themselves. So they can send equipment or whatever that they can record with. We can do that. We record from spaceships, but we can't
Yeah, but
physically.
you would think that they're
We
that
can't go
advanced.
to Mars, but we can record
Good
Mars
at it.
and watch it from Earth. So who's to say they're not doing a more long distance version of that?
You got to think about the options of terraforming too. I mean, if they're that advanced, they probably could have terraformed a planet in the same amount of time.
I mean, yeah, of course, but we're just theorizing here.
Right.
I think it's plausible. I mean, I don't have any evidence that that's the case, but
Nobody would.
given certain pieces, that's a theory that does kind of check all the boxes of things that we do know to be true, and
Right.
there's no pieces of evidence that inherently makes that, and in a lot of ways it does make a lot of sense, but Also, I really want to I do want to dig into that book of how consciousness, what the theory is of the internal development of consciousness. But I think
You're
that's
gonna have
still
to
kind of
post that as a link, like as where to buy it, because I'd be interested in getting that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll just put like the title, of course, down the title and author once I find it, wherever it is. Um, it's a bit of a thickie, and it's probably going to be a bit chewy. It's what that's how I describe books that you kind of got to read the same paragraph. You take two paragraphs forward and then you go back. Wait, was
You
like
gotta
I have to re-understand the last paragraph because now this one's not making sense, and
right.
you really got to chew your way through it, but it's worth it. Well, I hope it's worth it anyway. I hope it's not too dry, but I think the very interesting subject matter will keep me into it. So, um,
Absolutely. I mean, anytime you talk about consciousness, I get hooked
yeah.
immediately.
Do you have
I mean,
any other big thoughts on aliens, UFOs, and just like the more
yeah,
openness, like them admitting it,
if I have
if
to
you
say
will?
anything about it, it'd be pay attention. Don't just immediately discredit it. If you see a video of a supposed UFO, go into the comments, do some digging, like find out who the source is, where this was at, if anything was going around at the time. Like you have to, whenever I see a UFO video,
Well,
I'll
I
stop
think you should apply that to just basically
45 minutes
anything.
debunking. Yeah, but a lot of UFO enthusiasts don't. They're just like, oh, look, it's real. Um,
Okay, well, yeah. Well, if you want to believe it, it'll always be there. But we're talking more on the skeptics here, because now
yeah, no,
it's
that's
getting to the
okay.
point where being a skeptic is actually like, you know,
There's
it's
so many things out there that it's easy
it's very
to.
similar to the lab leak theory. A couple months ago, if you said, "Oh, lab leak, definitely," you were like a crazy person. But now, anyone who is saying it wasn't a lab leak, now they're the ones getting the side eye. You know what I mean? Same thing.
Hmm. Um, so yeah, just debunk everything. But like take your sources into account more than anything, like
Absolutely,
where it
yeah.
came from.
That's why I'm
Uh,
such a huge fan of Sagar and Crystal, which he's a huge UFO fan too. So I would suggest you start following him as well at
if
Breaking Points.
I will. I think I did subscribe to them. I watched a couple other their videos. Well, a couple minutes of them.
Yeah.
But it when you're outside at night, just like look up.
And
You never know
dream.
what you're gonna see, or even
Look
in the
up
day.
and dream of
Yeah,
ET.
no, just look in the sky more often because you might see some shit that you didn't expect to see. Um, and don't be afraid of them because if they wanted to hurt us, they would have done it a long
They
time
would have
ago, and they would have
fucked.
been so effective at it. Like everyone wants to think it's like, oh, they would nuke us or like shoot us with lasers. No, they would engineer a virus or a prion or some sort of microbe that would wipe us out so fast that we
No,
wouldn't.
it'd be so much simpler. They just like push a piece of space rock in the right direction.
Yeah, but see,
That
that's I
simple.
mean, they could use us as a resource gathering tool. So I think that I don't think they would want to harm the Earth while taking us
Infinite
out.
planets, infinite Earths, especially if they're
Yeah,
infinite dimensions. Well, what is the universe? The universe is many infinite dimensions, is it not? If the universe itself is infinite,
right.
but that's a whole another can of worms. If you
Well,
will.
right, and that sort
I'm,
is a possibility. It's like, well, if there's infinite, whatever, why would they be here? You know what I mean? But I mean, they're here. Yeah, I mean, we have evidence of it.
well,
There
I'll
are
tell you why they would want to be here, because this is the place where you can listen, like, and subscribe to DP the
oh,
Brain.
brain.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not cutting you off like that, but um, but
Those right.
no, those are all. Yeah, that's very. I mean, definitely always be skeptical of. We'll always take. You have to take into consideration source because all sources are inherently biased, even your own
Right.
eyes. Your own eyes are a biased source against you. Your own ears are biased. People with fake memories that they think are real, or if you've ever seen the thing where they ask people to count passes at a basketball game, then a gorilla comes out. They don't see the gorilla.
Right.
So just be critical of all sources, even yourself, and definitely be critical of your own thoughts and beliefs. Which I know we want to have another talk later about just thinking and all that stuff because there's a very interesting Joe Rogan guest who was talking about things like mental parasites thought parasites, and the fact that it's actually not healthy for us to tie up our identities into our beliefs, because then it inherently stops us from being able to change our beliefs without then having to change our whole identity, which we don't want.
Absolutely.
Your identity should be somewhat separate from your beliefs, if you will. But
Or
anyway, that's I want to get into that next time I have you on. But I knew you had a lot of knowledge in the conspiracy field too. But we're both working men in different ways. So this is going to be another great episode. Less vibes. Put out vibes to the people. How you feeling? What should they be?
Man, things are getting back to normal. I'm feeling better than I did the last podcast. And I don't know if that's a me thing or if that's like a just like general vibe of the world thing.
Is it my microphone?
What?
Is it the microphone? The audio quality?
Oh, yes.
Is that what's making you feel so much better?
Yeah, you sound real nice. I feel bad because I'm on a freaking tablet, so
Oh, you sound great.
you can
I'm
take
also
it
on,
easy.
as of the time of this recording, we're now officially on Spotify and, well, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the other, whoever's using the two people using Breaker, they can subscribe to me. But,
So I gotta follow you on Spotify too. I'll do that right after this. But
yeah, well,
yeah,
actually, yeah, sure, for sure, you got to, like and, well, I mean, any platform you're on, I'm probably on there, so, and it's
subscribe,
always going to be DP2daBrain, so Facebook,
follow,
Twitter, give me the likes and the follows, but
comment,
you
go
were saying
comment
they
down
can
in the comment section below. Let us know what you think.
MySpace it.
Um,
Check out my CS:GO gambling site that I may or may not own.
oh, loot crates.
Surprise mechanics. I'm sorry. Anyway, you were putting out last vibes.
um, I don't know. The world's going to shit, but as long as you stay informed and talk to
But
people
shit's
about
one hell of a fertilizer.
it, it is. But we're not allowed to eat meat anymore, so we're gonna have to put that towards the plants and the bugs.
That's very nice. All right, man.
But keep your mind open and talk to people about the things that you are concerned with. Because if you just tweet about it and bullshit with people and don't have real discussions in real life about it, you're never gonna get anywhere with it.
Yeah,
Spread the
that's
info.
fair.
Spread the information around. Talk to people. Don't be afraid to speak your mind.
The only answer to bad speech is more good speech.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks again for the time, guys. Don't forget to, whatever platform you're listening or watching this on, like, subscribe, follow. We're on all the medias and all that jazz. Don't forget to check down in the description. Every video has the guest's charity link to support them or whatever else they have down there. And thanks again for watching, guys. Or listening, whatever.